Hey everybody, welcome back to another holly jolly episode of End to Explain. My name is John here on Burns Reviews, and today we are talking about the new film from Robert Eggers, Nosferatu, starring Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, Willem Dafoe, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, and Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlock. But before we begin, if you could, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe so that the YouTube algorithm doesn't hit this video like the plague. Also, just a heads up, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for Nosferatu, so if you haven't seen Nosferatu, we also have a spoiler-free movie review as well as a straight out of the theater reaction video, so be sure to go check those out. With that said, let us finally talk about it, Nosferatu. Nosferatu has world premiere on December 2nd in Berlin, Germany, before being released in a wide release on December 25th, Christmas Day. I remember seeing the film at a press screening in Philly, and it was one of the most crowded screenings I've ever been to. Everyone was anticipating to see what Eggers would be doing with the character. Filming began on February 20th, 2023, and wrapped up on May 19th. To capture the essence of the character, Eggers filmed several of Orlock's castle scenes in Transylvania, even going as far to use Coven Castle, which is where the real-life Vlad Dracula was briefly imprisoned. For those that don't know, Dracula was based on a real man named Vlad Dracula, who was known for his brutality, more notably for the fact that he would often impale his victims from the bottom up, having spears push through their bottoms and come out through their mouths and shoulders. Which is absolutely horrifying, but you can see why Bram Stoker would have used this as the inspiration for the Prince of Darkness.
I bid you welcome.
Eggers filmed on big elaborate sets, and while there isn't an official release on how big the budget was for this film, many have speculated that it must be similar to his last big epic film, The Northman, which was roughly about $90 million. Much like Stanley Kubrick on The Shining or William Friedkin on The Exorcist, Eggers would shoot for long 16-hour days, absolutely pushing his actors to their limits in order to get them to feel the drain and the dread that the characters should be feeling. And you know what? It works pretty well. I've seen Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, and Aaron Taylor Johnson in far lesser movies. So if Eggers wants to pull a Tropic Thunder and push them to their limits to get the absolute best out of them, I'm all for it. They'll probably thank him in the end when they're getting awards and movie deals. And notably, the acting here is superb.
We are to tame darkness. We must first face that it exists.
Eggers also caught some flack for using 2,000 real rats on set, as PETA speculated that it was cruel to the rats and to have so many out in one spot at one time, but Eggers assured everyone this was very much not the case. If PETA wants to see what real rat cruelty looks like, they should look at the 1979 version of Nosferatu, where Werner Herzog said that he wanted rats in his version of the film to be gray. However, all they had was white, so he put them in all these cages, boiled them, turned them gray, killing essentially half of them. And of the ones that did live, they ate the dye off of each other, making the entire enterprise completely futile, a waste of time, money, and rats. Yikes. But let's talk about the cast. The film stars Lily Rose Depp as Ellen Hutter, a German woman recently married to Thomas, described as a pure woman and an angelic wife who, in her lonely youth, sought a guardian angel, a spirit of comfort, anything. This wish opens the door, through a psychic connection, to an evil creature that becomes obsessed with her. Mind you, in earlier versions of the script, it was said that Count Orlock was actually a wizard, but they cut this out in this version of the script, so it's not exactly canon, but it does make sense. Orlock was a wizard casting spells with the devil, and it's most likely through this that the two characters were able to connect on a supernatural level. Since this time, Ellen has been having horrifying nightmares involving the death of her loved ones. More disturbingly though, in her dreams, this death brings her much happiness.
But I've never been so happy.
Much to the dismay of her husband Thomas, along with her best friend Emma and her husband Harding. The role of Ellen was originally slated to go to Anya Taylor-Joy, who had previously been in Eggers' earlier films, The Witch and The Northman. However, due to scheduling conflicts with the Mad Max film Furiosa, Joy had to drop out. The same could be said for Harry Styles, who was also cast in an undisclosed role, but dropped out to focus on his music career. In September of 2022, it was announced that Bill Skarsgård was cast as the infamous role of Nosferatu, after Styles had dropped out. Funny enough, Skarsgård had originally auditioned for the role of Frederick Harding, and was offered the role of Thomas Hutter, while Taylor-Joy and Styles were still attached. Speaking of Bill Skarsgård, he has probably one of the most definitive, distinctive looks that this character across Nosferatu, Orlock, or Dracula has ever seen. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, where have I seen this character before? Because he seems kind of familiar in a very spooky kind of way. Where have I seen this look? And at first I thought maybe it was a character from Space Ghost or something from Adult Swim, and then it hit me. Do you guys remember back in the 90s or 2000s when SNL was like doing Will Ferrell, that crew? And they had this cartoon called the Ambiguously Gay Duo. It was a dumb cartoon, but basically it's like you had these two characters that were very much fashioned after Batman and Robin in the 60s. And they were two homosexual characters that were very much in the closet, but would do sexual things in front of their villains all the time, which would make the villains feel really uncomfortable. What are you looking at? Nothing! Well, the bad guy in that series, Big Head, that's where I've seen this character before. He has these really big, dead-looking eyes, he's mostly bald, and he has a really big mustache. Put that head on one of the guards from GoldenEye 64, drape a cloak over him, sharpen his nails, give him the skin of a walker from The Walking Dead, and that's essentially what he looks like. He's a bit horrifying to look at. He makes you feel like you're a POW in Germany and this is the guy they sent in to torture you. I can see why Skarsgård is getting so much praise because he's probably the most threatening looking version of a vampire posing as a human that I've ever seen. You know, he makes Gary Oldman and the other versions of Dracula and Nosferatu look pretty comical by comparison. Fun fact though, Bill Skarsgård's brother Alexander, who was in the last film by Robert Eggers, The Northman, actually got his start by playing a vampire on the popular TV show True Blood as Eric Northman. Funny enough, that character just had a reprisal on the TV show What We Do in the Shadows, where he cameos as that character again. Moving right along, we have Tom Hutter, who's played by Nicholas Hoult, who was about to play Lex Luthor in the upcoming Superman film, but who had previously played the role of Renfield amongst Nicolas Cage's Dracula in last year's Renfield. You probably recognize Emma Corrin from Deadpool and Wolverine, and Willem Dafoe famously starred in Shadow of the Vampire, which is a fictitious account of the making of Nosferatu, where Dafoe plays Max Schreck, the actor who plays Count Orlock, and John Malkovich, who plays Frederick Murnau, the director of Nosferatu. Here's another fun fact for you Batman fans. In the film Batman Returns, Christopher Walken is given the name Max Schreck. Burton intentionally gave him this name as an Easter egg to Nosferatu, because while he may not be a literal vampire who sucks blood, Walken plays a businessman who sucks the power out of Gotham using his power plant. As a fellow director of Gothic German Expressionism, it's a nice nod. So how does Nosferatu end? Well, after being sent to Transylvania to close a real estate deal with Count Orlock, Thomas Hutter unintentionally puts his wife Ellen on his radar. Like I said, they had a psychic connection from years before. Orlock traps Thomas in his castle while he travels to Westmar to go find Ellen, who he finds to be his one true love. In doing so, though, he brings a ship full of rats along with a plague that infects the entire city, driving many people insane and eventually dying. This plague is a big part of the movie and actually is a metaphor for the bubonic plague that devastated Europe in the 14th century. Nosferatu is essentially a metaphor for rats, plague, fear, paranoia, decay, death, and moral corruption that residents of that time often faced. Thomas is able to get back to Ellen, but many have died and she is very unwell. When doctors can't provide answers, they hire Professor Abend von Franz, who you may better know from the Dracula story as Abraham Van Helsing, played expertly by Willem Dafoe. Franz is a professor with profound knowledge of the occult and supernatural phenomena, and while shunned amongst his peers, they enlist him to get rid of the plague and, in turn, Orlock himself. From there, Orlock arrives to Ellen and leaves her with an ultimatum: succumb to him within 3 days, or endure the reign of his terror. On the second night, he kills her best friend Anna, along with her 2 children. He drinks them like juice boxes. It's kind of funny, but also kind of horrifying. This puts Harding, a vampire skeptic, into a complete state of shock, breaking his worldview and making him completely inconsolable. From this point, Ellen, Thomas, Harding, and Franz come together to plan a trap for Orlock and destroy him once and for all. However, after doing much research, Franz realizes that the only way for Orlock to be defeated is if Ellen sacrifices herself for the greater good. The greater good. To pull this off, Franz decides to leave Ellen at home and distract the others with a fake plan to destroy all of the rats in a mausoleum. And man, Willem Dafoe is having an absolute blast playing this character. It is quintessential Willem Dafoe, everything you want. Kind of spooky, kind of funny. He's the heart and levity of this film. To me at least, I thought he was the best part. And for a guy who's now 69 years old and been passed over by the Oscars 4 times, 4 nominations, I really hope he wins for Best Supporting Actor. Give this man his flowers. We may not have him forever. This is the best work I've seen him do in a while. Beetlejuice was kind of Come on. Anyway, Thomas realizes that he's been lied to by Franz and rushes back to go save Ellen, but it's too late. Orlock has already made his way to Ellen's bedroom. What makes this version of Nosferatu unique is that in the previous versions of the story, Ellen is simply a victim of the Count, having no real pull on the overall narrative. In this version though, she is complacent in giving up herself in order for the greater good. And man, is this scene steamy. Because in this version, Ellen is fully naked and lets Orlock, also naked, get on top of her, and while it's not explicitly shown, it's implied that it's more than just teeth that he slips to her. Which, my god, as the big horrifying beast that his body is, this big husk of a thing, it's pretty disturbing to watch. Body-wise, he looks like somebody's idea of what the Blair Witch would look like. With that, the sun rises through the window while Orlock gulps down the last of her blood, and while he first attempts to get up to leave, Ellen asks him to keep going, to keep sucking. I didn't write it, so he does, resulting in him slowly dying as the sunlight painfully burns him alive, killing him in the process. Ellen dies as far as we know, the plague leaves Germany, Harding is forever ruined, Thomas will never be the same. However, the sun is still shining, implying that despite the many scars and trauma that has haunted this town, there is still hope for a brighter tomorrow. Credits. So yeah, pretty bleak, but at the same time, still kind of beautiful. Nosferatu has been a passion project for Robert Eggers for a long time, stating that not only did he base his version on the original from 1922, but also on various incarnations of Dracula as well, acknowledging that you can't talk about Nosferatu without talking about the story that it ripped off. But what I found the most interesting is that he also took inspiration from a real-life story that happened in Romania, saying, as recently as 20 years ago in southern Romania, a man believed to be a vampire was exhumed, and his corpse ritually mutilated. As he was a difficult man and a heavy drinker, after he died, his family said he returned as a strigoi, which is a vampire in Romanian folklore. Usually people believe they were individuals who led sinful lives, died unnatural deaths, and were cursed in the realms of the supernatural. Anyway, the strigoi came back attacking them in the night. His daughter-in-law particularly was cured. What is dark trauma that even death cannot erase? A heartbreaking notion. This is the essence of the palpable belief in the vampire. The folk vampire is not a suave dinner coat-wearing seducer, not a sparkly and brooding hero. The folk vampire embodies disease, death, and sex in a base, brutal, unforgiving way. This is the vampire I want to exhume for a modern audience. Which will explain the scene with the villagers when Thomas is making his way up to the castles. It's pretty damn dark, but it's probably one of the most distinctive scenes in the movie. And it really demonstrates what was going on during that time. As far as the future of Nosferatu, I don't think I'd want to see a sequel. I think it's good as a contained story just the way it is. More than that, I'd like to see Robert Eggers perhaps take on a character like the Phantom of the Opera, but not a recent version. Go back to the original, old school version. Go really deep into that, and then show us a more modern version of that. With that said, considering that Nosferatu was a film that he's been carrying with him since he was 8 years old when he got a VHS and he watched it with his mom, and then he made a high school play, and then he carried it for all these years, more than likely, we will never see a film that is more of a labor of love from Robert Eggers than we have in Nosferatu. Special shout out to Roderick Hare, who recently joined Burns Reviews as a member here on YouTube Members. He requested that we cover the film Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which has some parallels to this movie, so we're going to be covering that next week or so. I hope you guys have a great holiday. If you want to request a video, be sure to join us on YouTube Members. Until then, be sure to comment down below. I want to know what you thought of this movie. Is it the scariest movie of the year? Do you like it more than Terrifier? It might be the best version of Nosferatu. But I want to hear what you guys think. Be sure to give this video a share, give it a thumbs up. Don't just subscribe. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been John. Happy holidays, and I will see you next time.